Your props are fading fast. August 31st won't last, but don't you stress, don't delay. There's a smarter, sharper way. It's Lead Scoring Monday with Casey. Just 15 minutes, sharp and pacey. Learn the tool, prep your team, make your scoring system a dream.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Lead Scoring Mondays. I'm Casey Hawkins, and if you've been following along, you know this is where we dive deep into lead scoring strategy every Monday, but today is special. Today, I'm launching something new. Welcome to the very first Lead Scoring Lab session.
Woohoo!
Which I just need like a new song, probably just like a new, more broad song. Now that I have decided I will be going live 100 times every Monday for some reason. I don't know why I chose that, but these are the choices I've made. Here's what the lab's all about. We've all been in those moments where you're staring at a lead score challenge thinking, how the hell do I solve this? The basic tutorials don't cover it, your usual approaches aren't working, and you just need to get creative. That's what the lab is for. Real practitioners solving real problems that made them think way outside of the box. Today, I'm thrilled to have Sarah Lane-Hawn from Lane-Hawn Consulting as our first lab guest. Sarah recently tackled one of the most unique lead scoring challenges I've heard about, and the mathematical solution she came up with is absolutely brilliant, as Sarah always does. So Sarah, welcome to the show. Congratulations on being my inaugural lab session guest.
I'm honored.
Tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I am a strategic consultant in the marketing and sales ops space. I specifically work with HubSpot the majority of the time. And so really help small to medium businesses who are in growth stages to help unlock the full potential of their software and kind of optimize for their conversion path. So we're in it for the company to make money. How do we help operationalize as much as possible to support the humans who are doing all of the hard work? So that's me. That's what I do. And this scenario actually comes from working with a client hands-on, and it was a weird enough scenario that I was like, I haven't seen this done yet. Let me talk to Casey. So happy to be here and be able to share it in case it helps others.
Perfect. So for this first lab session, we're going to walk through that real client scenario where traditional lead scoring was not working and you had to get mathematical. And you have a bit of a mathematics background, I think, right?
Yeah, that's what my degree's in.
Okay,
so,
yeah. I didn't want to speak too much too.
I mean, it was a million years ago, right? So like, not that I've used it, but my degree is in mathematics, mainly in pure mathematics. So it's very like theoretical exploration of how numbers work, not necessarily tangible like calculus engineering style of math. But yeah, it's something that like I think really helped shaped how I approach strategy, is that mathematical mindset of like there's never one right way to solve a problem. There's always a million ways to get there. So you pull in all your tools, you figure out the best approach you can, and truth remains true. And so you're always able to get there in the end. And I love that about operations. It's the same thing. Like there's a solution. We will find it. May have to use some weird techniques to get there. May have to invent or discover new principles, but we will get to the solution. And that was very much true here in the lead scoring.
Yeah, I think that's what I agree. I love that about operations, that like it's just always like kind of different. And that's always really fun. So let's go ahead and jump into your problem, and I can do this one. Share, I know you posted about this on LinkedIn. Um, so, and I had a different solution than how you solved it, which is also part of, I think, what's kind of fun about HubSpot. Can I say that? Is that too nerdy?
No.
I say this all the time to when my clients, like, there's no there's more than one solution with a lot of these complex issues that we're solving, and especially if I'm coming into a new portal, um, I'll see something and I'll be like, "Oh, well, I wouldn't have set it up that way, but that works." And
Yep.
sometimes my clients are like, "Oh, so the person before did something wrong." And I'm always like, "No, that's just it does
Just
this
preference.
like
Just
that way
preference.
it works."
Yep.
But yeah, so here, sorry, I live on like this weird Zoom. Here's the problem. So your client was looking for demographic fit, which had two required demographic elements, or the sales team would not consider them qualified. These elements could be either implied by various fields, not just one. So I'm reading that to mean that they are in the C-suite, might be one, which might be their job title, but we might not have their job title, so we might be inferring that from other pieces that we might have, just using an example.
Sure. That's a decent example. We'll get into some specifics, but yeah,
Okay.
that's fine conceptually.
And then another one similar to that where I only have one example on the top of my head, so we're just gonna go with that one. Then the second thing is there are a standard 4 or 5 additional fields of fit that should contribute to prioritization of them. So basically, like, there's two things that, like, if those two aren't true, maybe most commonly when I see people setting up lead scores, it's like job title and like industry of the company. So something like that. And then we want to see how to prioritize them from there. Fair? Broadly?
Yeah. So in this scenario, I tried to be kind of vague in the LinkedIn post here, just because I really wanted to see
Mhm.
at a high level what other operations executives like would suggest. Because I'd already at this point like decided what I was going to do, built it for the client, rolled it out. But I was curious how other people would approach it because I had already thought of like 2 or 3 alternative
Mhm.
solutions, and I'm like, I wonder how many there are. Like, are there 6 ways that people might approach this
Mhm.
that could be better for other client experiences? And so, yeah, this one we had already built a lead scoring framework, and this is specifically for a demographic fit. And it was fine. Like all
Mhm.
of the details were there. The scoring thresholds were there. It was complete. It was accurate from like a data perspective. And then where it was falling short was we were receiving feedback from the sales team that they're like, well, the scoring says that this is a fit, but this is absolutely not a fit. They are not ready to buy. They don't have the minimum criteria. And so that is what prompted the review of,
Mhm.
okay, the score is correct. Like, it's not broken, it's not wrong, but
Mhm.
it's not serving the purpose. It's not actually helping move things through quicker. It's not helping with prioritization. So the efficiency was lost, therefore making the lead scoring kind of like a moot point.
Mhm.
It's not going to be used.
Mhm.
And so with them, their demographic fit is kind of interesting in that they have kind of the standards, right? Like title, industry, all of those things. But there's also a ready to buy signal as
Mhm.
part of kind of their demographic fit. Um, and that was where we were running into problems is that they're B2B.
Mhm.
And so their client base, we needed to be able to say,
Mhm.
these companies are at the right stage.
Mhm.
They're actually going to be
Mhm.
ready to buy when we reach out to them, not just based off of an individual or company behavioral model, but demographically, we know
Mhm.
enough to know they're in the right stage as a company to
Mhm.
be a potential fit. And that was we already had the field level demographic data on that
Mhm.
pulled in, but we kind of were approaching it as a single scale, right?
Mhm.
So like these are the things that are most important to us, but there's not just one way to get there to that maximum score
Mhm.
or a minimum threshold. There's a lot of paths to get there.
Mhm.
And so that was the limiting factor.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's I mean, I think this is a great use case to share because I think this comes up a lot. Like, the want for this maybe comes
Mhm.
up a lot, and
Yes.
then it sometimes and this is true generally in HubSpot, like, people don't think all these things are possible, when they might be.
Everything's possible. It just may be ugly. And I think that's where we got to, both with the solution, but also in the conversation on this LinkedIn post was the solutions that other people were suggesting, which involved like, oh, we break it up into 2 scores, or we use a workflow to like kind of segment out the people who we care about, or we apply a lead score, but it's only to a subset of contacts, right? Like so many different ways
Mhm.
that we could solve this problem, that would all be accurate, all would work. And so that was kind of where I actually began with the client, was unpacking, okay, lots of ways we could approach this. um, because we have already walked down this lead scoring road now multiple times,
Mhm.
trained the sales team on it
Mhm.
multiple times, have in their mind the perception that there is errors,
Mhm.
which there aren't, but the perception is because it's not useful, therefore it must be wrong, right?
Mhm.
Totally fair assumption. So I'm like, the last thing I want to do is build something that has to be re-explained, that works in a different way,
Mhm.
that people have to now look at 2 scores, or half the companies that they look at, their records are empty and don't have anything there.
Mhm.
And so that's why for me, my advice was, hey, we're going to continue to have this in a single score. We're going to build this so that every company still has a demographic fit. And that way, what your sales team is looking at remains the same. And from
Mhm.
their perspective, it just now works. Right? We will take on the burden of building it in a way that is different and will function and does all these other things. But
Mhm.
from their perception, it's just we fixed it, it now works.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was the goal, was like, how do we minimize the friction in this process build, so that it's adopted quickly, so that it doesn't just like get dismissed, get put on the wayside, or feel like one more iteration of one more thing that may still not meet it, right? So the human element of that kind of operational efficiency really came into play when
Mhm.
analyzing which of these different correct solutions would be one that would work long term.
Mhm.
So putting it all in one score, that then ended up being the next requirement
Okay.
of this build.
Yeah. And I think I mean, every business is different. I like breaking my lead scores out into multiple scores. That's
Sure.
like that's my preference just because then you can see, you know, you can I usually use a calculated field to add all the scores together so I still have
Right.
one score. But I also have those broken out so that if I want to see, you know, who meets our demographic fit, I don't know, it just can sometimes be
Yes,
nice to see.
absolutely.
But
And
everybody's different and every business is different, not even.
yes, yeah, and you can, and I think that's something that people also don't know, right? Is that there's also just all of these other decisions along the way when you're building, that you can make. And so typically where I start, with whoever's owning lead scoring, is to ask them, what are we using it for? And then what do different people need to be able to take action off of?
Mhm,
Because even to the point of like, the default fields of, you have your number and then you have just the threshold categories, right? Your low, medium, highs. There's clients who on their contact or company records, we will only put the threshold like category,
Yeah.
no numbers,
Yeah.
because the numbers are just going to confuse things, have people ask more questions, and derail kind of like the efficiency of the process. And then there's other people who their sales team is so just in the weeds and efficient, and they have their processes down. And so the difference of like, 3 or 5 points in a lead score actually does change how they approach it, and they know what it means. They know how to action it. And so we put all of the information visibly up there, right?
Yeah.
So much depends on like the stage of your teams and who's using what. And so I will often have, the more granular details, they exist. We can find them. We can use them in segments. We can build lists, right? We can use them in workflows. And then whoever is going to need to be making quick decisions based off of them, what's the kind of minimum that they need to see so that we don't open ourselves up to unnecessary rabbit holes.
Yes. Yeah. So do you want to start jumping into your solution? We talked a little bit about just for anyone watching, my proposed solution was multiple scores with a roundup score, and then you could filter based on who meets the demographic fit and who meets those additional criteria. Just for, you mentioned that was my proposed solution, but I know, as you said, there were some client preferences and things like that internally. So
absolutely, and would have totally worked. Just would not have summarized it. Okay, I'm throwing my screen share on here. I don't know.
Sorry, I needed to remove my screen share. It was a whole...
Perfect. All right, so this is the fit score. I show this screen first just so that we have a reference of like where this is in HubSpot. It's under lead scoring. It's a demographic score. This is on the contact level. And then I use calculated fields to do a roll up. But I show this also because it's really hard to see in HubSpot what is happening. And so one of my just like side suggestions is build your lead scoring in a spreadsheet first. Because if you try to have discussions on this view, it's really hard. But you will see here, and this is kind of the important part of this, the grouping, right? So there were 2 criteria that the sales team said, if this doesn't exist, it's a no-go. We don't care if everything else is a fit. If we don't know that they're in the right kind of category for us, not necessarily industry, but like category of product fit, for lack of a better term. If we don't know that they're in that right category, we're not talking to them. And then their buyers, being in a kind of unique industry, have different levels of maturity. And one level of maturity is that they have like a front office who's making certain decisions. So that was the second fit check that had to be there. And then you have everything else. So then you had your industry fields, and then you had all of the detail fields that we're used to, which is like their titles and their revenue per year, and all of those other kind of standard demographic elements. I also somehow in this model broke HubSpot, so the page times out all the time. If there is a product manager watching this that sees it, might want to figure out why I broke it, so that we can make that faster. But you can see here, kind of how the scoring is going for these categories. So within HubSpot, the 100-point limit drives me crazy. I hate it. I don't like that I can't manipulate how big scores can get, and they can't be infinite, and I don't like it. But working within that parameter,
you can increase it to like 500. I do that sometimes.
You can do it to 500. Okay. Good pointer. So working within whatever max parameter you're working within. The goal was 2 groups of criteria that were required, and then a third group of criteria that would just help us with prioritization. So mathematically, trying to approach that, right? We have three things, 3 groups of things. And so I did 30 points for fit 1, 30 points for fit 2, and then you have this 40 points left over, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is that someone, we're saying you have to hit 60 points then to be just check. We know that they're that minimum viable fit. The problem was then at that point, you could replace that 30 points, one of those criteria, with all of these other detail elements.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to prevent. We don't want people to be able to qualify any other way other than to have these 2 categories met. Anything else is bonus points on top of it. And so instead, I basically falsely moved what our max was going to be and said, okay, well then there's only 29 other points. There's not 40, there's 29 other points that we can work within. That's it. And that way there's no way to accidentally hit that 60 points. You could get to 59 points, right, by having one of these groups met and all of these other wonderful elements, but you cannot get to 60. And so that was really the crux of the build, was what is kind of that required number that they have to hit based on number of required criteria groups. And then what is then left over, and it's always going to be one less than what you make your criteria group. And so then it was within those scores that I could break up and say, okay, what do we have to work with? And so a lot of the categories ended up being like 1 point, 2 point, 4 point, right? They're really tiny increments versus these 30 point, mega qualifiers that we have here. And that to me was what was very different about building this. Was I tend to like to use like a 10-point scale for most categories. And, there's some play within that, but like pretty consistent between the different categories of information we're looking at. So to instead now have these 30-point elements and these 2-point elements was very, struggled with making sure that still worked the way that I wanted it to.
Yeah.
But I can show you here. This is the spreadsheet that I use in order to help think through it. So basically, if they are a product fit client, their score is going to be somewhere between 60 to 89 now. And so we still have a high, medium, low, even within the fit. And so we ended up, we're testing it out with, I think, the high threshold being like above 74 or 75, right? We kind of split that in half. But, so 0 to 60, no go. 60 to 74, yep, they meet the requirement. 75 to 89, they meet the requirement, and they have some of this high prioritization information. And what made this hard was that like it wasn't just one element, like you talked about, industry or title, right? If we had that all the time, great, we could just make it a field and we wouldn't have to do all of this. But instead, they have 3 different fields of information that are very hit or miss if they have it, depending on how they got the information to start with. And so it had to be a group of criteria with, if we know any of these, great, they hit it, but we have a category max, you're not going to get, 90 points from having this job function and these titles. And then all of these others, I had to go in. This was the original scoring. And then this was the adjusted scoring that we ended up doing to figure out kind of what was the way that we were going to come up with our 29-point accelerator. items. So it was a very interesting process. Not a way that I would necessarily suggest doing scoring all the time. But again, it's in one score, uses the mathematical principles so that there is not a way for someone to falsely hit that threshold,
Mhm.
but still provides within the one score then the variation of kind of those
Mhm.
accelerator criteria.
Yeah. I think there's a few things, like, for me one is, like, um, I think this is interesting because this actually wouldn't work the way you built it in the old scoring properties
Mhm.
because of the scoring limits. I
Yep.
know I talk about lead scoring all the time. I know there's some complaints about the new scoring tool. Part of that, I think, is change is hard, and it is. I hate when they change the navigation. I am still complaining about it.
Yeah.
Um, but there are some really good features in the new tool that were not in the old properties.
Mm.
And I think this is one of them. It enables something like this. The other piece that I would challenge people to think about is the you had to adjust your scores down, like, your scores were too high. You can do that. Like, there's no I say this to my clients all the time that they're like, "Okay, well, how many points should be our, like, top score?" And I'm like, "I mean, we can make it 10." Like, we
Does
don't
it
have
yeah, it doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Um, I mean, it matters in some like, some of those actions, like your industry or details, those things, some of them are
Yeah.
higher value or less, but
Mhm.
all you need to do is figure out which are higher, which ones are less, and oftentimes I talk to my clients and I'm like, "Okay, how many content downloads is worth a demo request to you?"
Mhm.
And
Yep.
to be honest, no amount of content
Not
downloads is worth
equivalent,
a demo
but
request,
yeah,
to be
some
clear.
sort of comparison. And yeah, I do the same thing. And even within like the combinations of scores, the last step that we do is, and this is often more behavioral than demographic, but even in demographic, I'll put together some, okay, here's 3 different ways that someone could hit this same threshold.
Mhm,
And then give those as examples to the sales team to say, do you agree? Like, would you want to talk to each of these people
mhm,
around the same priority,
mhm,
or is one of these like vastly different? And that'll give you enough insight to be able to go in and tweak them if you missed something during the initial build. Because a lot of times people don't know. They're just like, we want to talk to anybody who's qualified. It's like, yes, you do. In what order? And so I ask the order question a lot. I'm like, that's great. But if I give you 100 leads that you need to go reach out to,
mhm,
and you can pick based off of any of this information I've got,
mhm.
who are you going to want to talk to first? Because they're going to move faster. They're going to have a larger deal amount, right? Like, what does even just your gut tell you from
Mhm.
doing this? And there's always an answer. It's never we just probably call everybody. Like every time they're like, nope, I would want to talk to these people first because they're going to be more likely to buy, right? And so then that like intrinsic knowledge of prioritization, it helps with a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah. You also you mentioned this, but I think this is worth saying again, that iteration is necessary. Like, we often set these lead scores up, and then we just ignore them for months. Not like we, I just mean like we.
Yep.
Um, uh, I just said to somebody the other day, it was almost certainly on a live, so if you listened, you're gonna hear it again. Um, that's just my life right now. But I feel like we set a lead. Oftentimes, I see organizations set a lead score up, and then they don't look at it, touch it until a new CMO, a new head of sales comes in, something like that, and then we just like rip it all up and start over. And that's so time consuming, and we lose so much in all of that.
Mm,
Um, so I think it's worth kind of adapting and like getting a sense. You start sending some leads to sales, and then you say, how's it going?
Well, and what was great in this scenario was we didn't add a single new field when we did this build.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm,
every single one of the criteria was the exact same.
mhm,
Prioritization of all of those fields was the exact same. Like, we had already done the work,
mhm,
to make sure that the
mhm,
ICP stuff was in there. What changed was kind of how we were modeling it so
mhm.
that we could now include the sales team's, like, required elements that had not been articulated
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
But I think that was a big kind of confirmation to me that we had done work well already, was when I was like, "There's nothing new that we have to add. We're just approaching this in a different way."
Mhm.
And so, like, from an operations perspective, that's really nice to know, and, like, my point of contact knows, right, that it wasn't an error, and then the sales team will get to be happy now because it should actually fulfill, their baseline needs.
Mhm.
So, yeah, iteration's important. I agree. I don't think it usually requires then a rip and replace unless what was built originally does not apply anymore to the actual company model.
Yeah. I know we're a little over time. Sarah has one question. Sarah, question from Sarah. How much cleanup did you have to do behind the scenes in order to get the final properties that were part of the lead score build?
For this one, not much, because all of these were already standard elements that are in their database. What was really the most difficult element was that for these kind of required categories, the ones with the asterisks only are there for a very small portion
Mhm.
of all of their contacts. And so that was what was the most difficult, was figuring out, like, okay, we have industry for everybody. Can we use that as a fallback when we don't have these really, like, articulate fields
Mhm.
involved? And so it was kind of creating those fail safes was more of the strategic work
Mhm.
than there was data backfill. Now, the next stage for them, for this particular client, is to start using AI enrichment. And so
Mhm.
we're actually vetting some tools to do that right now so that we can hopefully get more of these, really, really articulate pieces of information.
Mhm.
Um, so then we'll do some big backfill once we find the right solution for them. But yeah, so far, not really a data cleanup problem, more so a understanding problem of
Yeah.
what do we have to work with, where when these are all empty,
Yeah.
can we use something to imply what we're trying to get after?
Yeah. All right. Well, Sarah, this has been absolutely incredible for our inaugural lab session. I love how you walked us through not only the solution, but the entire strategic thinking behind it. The mathematical approach you developed is brilliant, and I think anyone can see how the multiple right answer concept applies to so much of what we do.
Yeah.
For everyone watching, if you found this helpful, definitely connect with Sarah on LinkedIn. She's always sharing great insights about HubSpot strategy. And here's the big question. Do you, watcher, have a lead scoring challenge that belongs in the lab? I'm talking about those problems that make you stare at the screen and think there has to be a way to solve this, but I have no idea why. If you've got a complex scenario that's stumping you, DM me. I'd love to hear about it. You could be the next lab guest. Make sure you're following me for more Lead Scoring Mondays. We'll have regular episodes plus more lab sessions as we find challenges that make your brain hurt in the best way possible. Sarah, any final thoughts for our lab audience today?
No, I appreciate getting the chance to share and just encourage everyone to know that there is always a solution. It just might be ugly. So use use your people and your resources to help kind of brainstorm what's going to work best for your end user. Don't get stuck in the weeds of doing things the same way all the time. Be willing to flex. Be willing to try something new, and hit up people like me and Casey if you need additional support.
Perfect. Thanks again, Sarah, for being my first lab guest. And thanks to everyone who joined us live today. Drop your questions in the comments. We'll both be monitoring and responding. The recording will be here. So hopefully you're watching right here too. And if you've got a challenge for the lab, slide into my DMs. I'll be back with more lead scoring content. Until next time, keep experimenting.
Storm props are fading fast. August 31st won't last, but don't you stress, don't delay. There's a smarter, sharper way. It's Lead Score Monday with Casey. Just 15 minutes, sharp and pacey. Learn the tool, prep your team, make your scoring system a dream.